To this point, Paul has spoken about the first three pieces of armor that we are to wear all the time and never take off. But beginning with a change in the verb, he now talks about the pieces of armor that we are to pick up as the situation and circumstances call for them. You might think of it like a baseball player's uniform. During the game, he wears the uniform all the time, but he picks up the bat or the glove or the batting helmet as the occasion is appropriate. He now wants you to pick up the shield called faith. There's a lot of misunderstanding today about what faith is. Faith is more than intellectual understanding and agreement. It's more than a spiritual feeling that you feel at any given moment. You can only measure whether you truly have faith by the movement of your feet. Faith has to function in order to be real. It can't simply be talked, it has to be walked. So let's look at this shield of faith, which has been so constructed to handle any of the fiery darts, any of the spiritual attacks that the enemy sends your way. And be assured, he's got plenty with your name on it.
You say, well, how do I access all of this that you tell me I have if I'm a Christian? My assumption is that you're a Christian. If you're not a Christian, you have nothing to access. But if you are a Christian, if you have responded to Jesus Christ, how do I access this victorious living in the midst of this spiritual battle that I'm experiencing in my physical world? How do I access it? He answers that in verse 16. He says, in addition to all, taking up the shield of faith with which you will be able to extinguish all the fiery darts of the evil one. He introduces us to the next piece of armor called the shield of faith, or let's put it another way, the shield which is faith. The shield is actually faith itself. I want to today clarify faith for you because many of us have misunderstood faith, misused faith, misunderstand faith, and yet faith is critical. Because he says, leading off verse 16, in addition to all. In other words, and I know I've told you a lot so far, but if you grab this one, you got it all. This one, he says, is key. Faith. In addition to all, take up the shield of faith. Now, notice the verb, take up. The first three pieces of armor, he didn't use the word take. He uses the word to be. In the text, it says having in verse 14 and 15, having the belt of truth, having the breastplate of righteousness, having the shoes of the gospel. But now he switches verbs. The first three are something you wear all the time. You keep truth with you. You keep righteousness with you. You keep the peace of God with you. You keep those with you. But now when he comes to this next piece, the shield of faith, he says that one you pick up. You take. The first three you keep with you all the time. The last three you pick up on an as-need basis. It's like a baseball player. He wears his baseball suit during a baseball game. He never takes off his uniform, but he picks up the bat when it's time for him to bat. He picks up the glove when it's time to go to the field. In other words, he picks up those as needed. The first three you keep with you. You never take them off. You never change those clothes. But now you must take up the shield of faith. Please notice, you got to take it up. God won't take it up for you. This is your responsibility. He calls it a shield of faith. A Roman soldier had a shield. When it was time for him to fight, he would take his shield. The shield was 2.5 feet wide, 4 feet long. This shield was so situated that a Roman soldier could crouch down and hide his whole body behind it. In other words, the shield covered all of him. when it was positioned correctly, his full body could hide behind it. In fact, when you see them in battle, sometimes the Roman soldiers would link their shields next to each other, and a whole army could crouch down and hide behind it. Because the shield of faith would handle anything that the enemy threw at it, whether it was a javelin or whether it was an arrow. So the reason why this particular armament is so critical is that it covers all of you if you're behind it properly. He says, in addition to all, take up the shield of faith. When do you need to take it up? Well, he's told us earlier, on the evil day. The evil day is the day all hell breaks loose in your life. It is when you're under attack. It is when the finances are so low you don't know how you're going to make it. It is when you've lost your job and there's none in sight. It is when everything is breaking down emotionally. It's the evil day. It is the day when all hell is broken loose in your life. The day of your attack. On that day, you need to be covered by a shield which is called faith. When they launch space capsules into the air and they come back down into the atmosphere, they would burn up except that they have a shield around them. This shield, in light of the heat breaking into our atmosphere, keeps them from burning up. On the evil day, you feel like you're going to burn up. He says, but if you have a shield, you'll make it in an atmosphere of chaos. So the question is now, what is faith? What is faith? Let me give you a simple definition of faith, as simple as I can get it. Faith is acting on the truth. Faith is acting on the truth. Now, if you don't know the truth, or if you don't act on the truth, the word faith is a meaningless phrase. It's talk. Faith is acting on the truth. So in order to have faith, you got to find the truth. And the truth is God's view of a matter. So if you're not interested in discovering God's view on a matter, forget having a discussion about faith. Because faith is only faith when it's tethered to truth. Because when it's tethered to truth, it knows the right decision to make, confirmed by the shoes of peace, because you exercise the real meaning of faith. Faith is merely acting like God is telling the truth. A lot of people talk about faith who are not connected to the truth and wonder why faith isn't working. So guess what they do? They go around looking for more faith, thinking if I can get a little bit more faith, maybe I can get a little bit more help. But you cannot have faith and get help if your faith is not tied to truth. And truth is what God says about a matter. Faith is not necessarily feelings. You can feel full of faith and have no faith. You can feel faithless and be full of faith. Faith is not based on how you feel. Now, how you feel may be consistent with faith in a given moment, but at another moment, how you feel may have absolutely no correlation to faith whatsoever. Because feelings are circumstantially driven. You feel based on how things are going. If things are going well, I feel good. Dun, 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 dun. If things are not going well, I feel bad. Because circumstances dictate feelings. And you can't always control that. You can't always control that. I am glad my faith is not tied to my feelings, because then my faith would be as up and down as my feelings are. And we all up and down to various degrees on the feeling side. So I want to get feeling out of the definition of faith, although sometimes it is consistent with faith. Faith is acting on the truth, whether I feel the truth or not, whether I like the truth or not, whether I agree with the truth or not. Faith is acting on it. So you can feel faithish and be faithless. You go to the movie, it's a horror flick. It's a horror flick. You know those monsters aren't real. You know that. You know the zombies coming out of the grave aren't real. Yet you're sitting there, covering your eyes, can't sleep because you remember the show, and you know it's not real. You know that. You knew it before you went in. You knew it while you were watching it. You knew it when you left, and you're still all shook up. That is because the masters of the media so constructed the lie of the horror film to make you feel like it was true, even though intellectually you knew none of that was real. But they manipulated it so and made it seem so real that it governed your feelings. You will never overcome the movie until your mind overcomes your emotions. Because your emotions are controlling you based on a lie that the movie perpetuated to you. And as long as they can keep the lie in your mind, they can keep you up at night, and you're being kept up by something you knew wasn't true. When we allow faith to be defined by feelings, we will always be confused. So let's put faith in the objective place where it belongs. Faith does not make God move. Let's get this straight. Because if you believe faith makes God move, then you're going to be looking for more faith. You don't need more faith. If you're a Christian, you have all the faith you're ever going to need for anything God's going to do with you. So let me help you now. Oh, God's trying to increase my faith. No, he's not. He's trying to increase your knowledge, but you've got plenty of faith. Because Jesus said, if you have faith the grain of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. In other words, a little dab will do you. You don't need more faith. You need more truth. Because if you put a little bit of faith in a whole bunch of truth, that's all you need. Faith does not get God to move. All faith does is access what God has already done. Faith is the point of access, not the point of power. The power is in what God has already done in grace when he deposited the divine life within you in seed form. As the knowledge of God enters into that seed expands, and all you're doing with faith is withdrawing what grace has already put on deposit. So stop looking for more faith. You don't need more faith. The moment you act on what God says, that's all the faith you need. You got plenty of faith. So you got all the faith you need. Whatever growth your faith needs, it will get from the action you take, not by trying to conjure up more faith. Not by trying to whip it up. Just trying to whip up faith. When really all you're doing is whipping up emotion. You're not whipping up faith. He says, I want you to have the shield of faith. Faith is your access point, Romans chapter 5, verses 1 and 2. He says faith gives you access to grace, and grace is where God has deposited everything he's going to do for you. Everything God is ever going to do for you, he's already done. He can't do anything more. So even when you say, God bless me, it's kind of we understand what each other means, but all the blessings he's ever going to give you, he's already given you. There's nothing new he can do for you. Your problem, my problem, is withdrawing it, not getting it. It's already given. Faith withdraws it. So here it is. Grace puts on deposit all of God's goodness on your behalf. Faith accesses the deposits. Work proves you're exhibiting faith. Work proves you're exhibiting faith. Faith accesses grace. Grace has on deposit what you're looking for. Works don't get grace because once you attach works to grace, it's no longer grace. Romans 11:6 says, once it's of works, it's no longer of grace. So works don't give you grace. Works just access faith, and faith accesses grace. That's how it flows. So, he says, put on the shield, this covering called faith. Faith is a law, Romans 3:27 says. It's a rule whereby you operate. He says you're not only supposed to get saved by faith, he says in Romans 1, you're supposed to live by faith. In other words, this is supposed to be the way you flow. You're supposed to have a faith walk. That's why the Bible calls it walking by faith. You're supposed to have a flow faith. It's supposed to be the way it's supposed to be your groove. It's supposed to be your zone. It's supposed to be your modus operandi. But it must be linked to truth. Now here it is. Please notice this. I'm explaining faith. Faith, if you want it to be real, watch this now, cannot be limited to your five senses. If you limit faith to your five senses, it won't be real faith. It won't be real faith. Because we're talking about accessing the invisible realm, not the visible realm. So we're not talking about accessing the stuff you can see and touch and taste. Hebrews 11:1. Faith is the substance of things hoped for. It is the evidence of things not seen. If you can see it, it's not faith. If it's tangible and if it's moving in the physical realm, it's not the faith God is talking about. That's just human faith anybody can have. Anybody gonna believe something that they're looking at? I believe you sitting there. How come? Because I see you. That's not what he's talking about. He's not talking about that. He's saying it's the evidence, it's the substance, so it's real. Even though it's in the spiritual realm, it's real, and it has evidence. It's provable, but it's not yet seen. The whole point of faith is to grab something out of the unseen realm and bring it down to the visible realm. So you never start with what you see to determine whether you have faith. That's called sight. It's a whole nother word. And because we don't live by faith, in other words, because that's not how we roll, that's not our flow, we don't see much grace. He says, in addition to all, above all things, take on the shield of faith. Why do I need the shield of faith? Faith. Acting like God is telling the truth. Acting like it is so even when it's not so, in order that it might be so simply because God said so. You go to the doctor because there's typically something wrong you can't fix. Because usually you started off with over-the-counter. You started off with human ability. You started off with your own mind could conjure up. You started off with what you could take care of yourself. So you went to the doctor and you went to the pharmacy, you went to Walgreens or some other pharmacy and you got some, something for your stomach, antacid, or you got something because you were going to do the best you can to make life better. But your best wasn't working. So you call the doctor. You tell the doctor, Doc, I've got a problem. My stomach hurts. The doctor's going to hear your call, but he's not going to take for granted your problem. He's not going to assume what you think is wrong is what's wrong. Now, you've talked about how you feel because you talked about the pain. But in his mind, there could be something else causing what you think is a stomach ache. So he's going to do a battery of tests to ascertain the truth about what's really wrong, creating the pain that you're now experiencing. Because all you know is the pain, you don't know what the real problem is yet until somebody who knows more than you assesses the situation, who can tell you what the truth is about what you feel. All you know is, I feel a little something, but obviously I don't know enough because I couldn't fix it. So I'm going to you, Doc, for you to tell me what the real deal is. I need the truth. Why? Because until you get the truth, you can't fix the problem. See, as long as you're satisfied with antacids, and that's not your problem, then you're not dealing with the truth, although you think you're dealing with the truth. You're just dealing with limited knowledge. But the doctor has information you don't have. He comes out and he says, oh, this is the problem, which was more than just a general upset stomach. He says, this is the problem. He pulls out a sheet of paper called a prescription, and he writes on it words you do not understand. In fact, if you can read his writing, he's not a real doctor. Because one of the ways you know a real doctor is a real doctor is he can't write. You have this piece of paper, and he says, take this for your real problem, because those antacids you were taking is not your real problem. Take this. Maybe he's discovered an ulcer. You take a piece of paper that you don't understand to a pharmacy. You give it to the pharmacist, whom you do not know. The pharmacist goes back there with a whole bevy of medicines and starts putting your stuff together. That man could be putting strychnine and giving it to you because you don't know. The only reason you're doing this is you know he's qualified. You know, he's got a qualification. You don't know it based on what you're seeing, because what you're seeing may not be what it really is. And you don't even understand the paper, so you can't even test what he's doing by what's written in the paper. You got to believe that what he is offering is what's on the paper. So you've taken the prescription, you've gone to the pharmacist, he's given you the medicine. Now you've done all that, you still got an upset stomach. And the reason why you have an upset stomach is the reason it was written and the reason you went to the pharmacy wasn't to get it, read it, and deliver it. It was to get it, read it, deliver it, get it, and take it. Until you take it, you've not fulfilled obedience. And if you don't fulfill obedience, you're not going to get better. Because your way was solving the symptom, not solving the problem. See, many of us, we come to church and we get the word and we say, well, I don't understand all that. I don't understand all that. I haven't studied Hebrew and Greek and Aramaic, and I don't fully understand all that, but I know the one who gave it knows what he's talking about, because he's a pro, he's a doctor. If there is no acting on what's prescribed, there is no faith that has been exhibited. And if there is no faith that has been exhibited, stop complaining to the doctor, his stuff not working. We've got a lot of people complaining to God, your way doesn't work, and we haven't taken pill first. Well, we took one pill and there are 20 in the bottle. He said take one every 4 hours, we take one every 4 days, and wonder why it's not working. Because we have not exhibited faith. Faith is not a feeling. Faith is not a discussion. Faith is an action taken based on the authorization of somebody who knows what he's talking about. Last time I checked, God knows what he's talking about. Why do you do this? So that you will be able to extinguish all the fiery darts of the evil one. He says the reason you do this, the reason why faith, that shield that you ought to crouch behind, because it can handle anything thrown your way. All the fiery darts of the devil. Notice, not all the darts or arrows. The word dart means arrows. The Roman shield is made of wood, but it's wrapped in leather or some kind of animal skin. When they went out to war, they dipped it in water. They knew that people were going to throw spears at them and that they were going to shoot at them. And that some would dip their tip of their arrow in pitch and light it. That's why he calls fiery arrows. That's an arrow that's been set aflame. He says the shield of faith is so strong that not only cannot arrows get you, arrows that's been put on fire can't even burn you down. He says the shield of faith is staggering. Why? Because faith enters into the realm of grace and accesses God at a whole nother level. It accesses God. That's why 1 John 5:4 says we are overcomers by faith. In order to be an overcomer, there's got to be something to overcome. Maybe you're trying to overcome joblessness or finances or emotional fire of the mind or emotional depression, or maybe it's relational fires that you're going through, or maybe it's sin and temptation that has set you aflame. Whatever the fire happens to be, he says faith can put it out. Faith can put out the fire. But you've got to define faith God's way, not your way. Any weightlifter who can lift 500 pounds doesn't have a problem with 100 pounds. If you can lift 500 pounds and somebody says, well, can you lift this 100-pound bag? Ain't nothing but a thing, because if you can handle 500, 100 is no big deal. On the cross, Jesus Christ handled the sins of the whole world. The whole world, for all people, for all time, all sin was pinned on Jesus Christ 2,000 years ago on the cross. All the sins of all mankind for all world was put on Jesus Christ on that day. So if he could handle all the sins and all the circumstances of all men for all time, what did you tell me your problem was? What did you tell me your situation was? What did you tell me your need was? And you're going to imply the God who can handle it for the whole world on the cross, yours is a little bit too heavy. No, what's missing is faith in it, not power for it. What he is suggesting to us is that if we will take faith seriously as God defines it, you will experience victory as you've never had it before. I will never forget it. I will never forget it. This is lodged in my mind. The 1996 Olympics. Her name was Carrie Struggs. She was a gymnast, a little tiny girl. The United States gymnast team was in second place. Carrie Struggs was the last gymnast to go, and she had to make a certain score to overcome the first place team. I don't remember whether it was Romania or Soviet Union, but whoever it was, she had to do this certain 9-point something to overcome so that the United States would win the gold medal. So all the pressure is on little Carrie. Carrie stands, and Carrie looks down because she has to vault. She has to go, propel herself, flip over the horse, and come back down, standing up to get a high enough score. Little Carrie takes off, and she's running. She hits the spring. She hits the horse. She flips over, and she comes down, but she comes down wrong. And she horrifically twists her ankle so that she cannot even walk. She falls down, she cannot even walk, low score. You could hear the hush over the crowd, particularly of the Americans. Oh no, you could see her team wince. And Carrie began to weep. Because this whole thing is riding on her. She has one more jump. One more jump. But she can't walk. And to do this, you got to be able to run, jump, hit, put pressure down and jump, flip, and you got to land standing up to get a high enough score to win. She's got one more jump. So she's there weeping and trying to stand up, barely can stand up on the one leg, can't put any pressure on the second leg. Over in the corner was her coach, Bella Carolla, the famous gymnast coach. He looked at Carrie crying because they couldn't go meet. He says, Carrie, look at me. Don't take your eyes off of me. You look at me. I know you're hurting. I know you're in pain, but you keep your attention focused on me. You look at me right now. I know you're hurting. I know you're in pain. I know you can't walk, but girl, you look at me, because I want to tell you, you can do it. I know you don't think you can. I know you're hurting. You can barely walk. Don't look at your foot. Look at me. Don't look at your circumstance. I know, because if you look down there, all you see is more defeat. I want you to keep your eyes on me. Now you go back there, girl, and you do this thing one more time, but when you go back there, your full attention is to be on me. Little Carrie goes around, limps to the starting place, and you can see her cast her eyes over to her old coach to look at him, because she's got to piggyback off of his faith, because her circumstances don't give her the power to piggyback off of hers. But in her pain and her anguish, she now looks down, half running and half hobbling. She makes her way down. Some of you saw it. She leaps up. She flips over the horse. She comes down. Whop, boom. She goes, whop, boom. Immediately lifts up this hand. After both feet have landed, she lifts up this foot. She stands there wiggling, but stands in place. The place goes absolutely crazy because she landed on two, even though she could only stand on one. And the United States gymnastics team won first place. You know why they won? Because there was somebody in the corner who said, don't look at your situation. Don't look at your circumstance. I know you feel it. I know it's real, but keep your eyes on me. I think if the author of Hebrews here would say, keep your eyes on Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith, he would say, don't look at your situation. You can't ignore it because it hurts. Because if you'll keep your eyes on me, even if you got the limp, you're going to land right. And you're going to be able to hold your ground. The shield of faith. Running on the truth will give you the ability to overcome the attacks.